I promised that tonight I'd have a lesson that I hope will have some meaning for our young people. And that's not to say it doesn't have meaning for all of us. But those of us who have reached that point where we're no longer seated over here, let me take a moment, young people, to say again, I think I've done this before, but the fact that you come down here close and sit together like that is just very, very encouraging. And the way you continue to do it faithfully. There's some times that some of you sit back there, but mostly you're all here and you're in that place. And it helps me to be encouraged that you care. And I appreciate seeing you writing down things, and I hope that's notes about what I'm saying rather than to each other. Or your phones, I hope you've got the Bible on your phones, those kinds of things. I'm not going to come over there and check, but you're really appreciated, and I hope that the lesson has more meaning for you because you've got so much longer, if everything continues as we anticipate, you've got so much longer to advantage yourself with the thoughts, the kinds of things that we talk about than the rest of us do. We may have had some warnings and some advice along these lines when we were your age, but in all likelihood, we don't remember it if we did. And so we can apply it again at this point in time. Life is a real interesting thing, and we do the best we can with it, but the fact is we don't have any rehearsal. We don't have any, let's try this, and then if that didn't work, then next time I'll do that. People are always saying, in my next life, I'm going to do this or this. But of course, we've only got one life. That is, one life upon this earth, and so far as being born and living, we'll live forever, one place or another, but it won't be on this earth that we live forever. Some people have a morbid attitude about life, and others don't. They enjoy, and they practice and do the best they can. And you would know that the latter of those is going to be better for you. Job was a man who really had a hard time in life. There were so many things that happened to him that we wouldn't try to list them all. In Job 14, the first couple of verses, he talked about the fact that man that is born of woman is of a few days and full of troubles. He cometh forth as a flower and withers. You know, he doesn't stay forever. But then there were other places where he wished that he wasn't staying as long as he was because of what was happening. The psalmist in the 39th Psalm talks about the question of, what do I wait for? My hope is in thee. Why do men spend so much time gathering things and working hard and saving and accumulating when they don't know who's going to spend the money? They don't know who's going to use what they work for, because they'll have to leave it all behind with someone else. I need to realize, he said, that my hope is in you. I need to focus on you, Lord. He learned that lesson somewhere along the line. And to know that would be helpful to us all the time. David said that our days would be numbered. The days of our years, he said, will be about 70. But if by reason of strength they're fourscore, yet their labor is strength and sorrow, and soon we fly away. So, Lord, teach us to number our days and to apply our hearts unto wisdom. Let us make the most of our life while we can. And that's what I wanted to call this lesson tonight, how to live a life that's worthwhile. A life that amounts to something. A life that you be pleased with, that you'll enjoy, because you only have that one time. And when you reach a point far beyond where you are now, you'll look back over the long period of time and you'll say, you know, that's just like it was yesterday. That happened so fast. People, when they've been married 50 years, look back at the 50 years and say, where'd it go? What happened? It seems like it was just a few months ago that we got married. And so to make the most of every moment is very, very important. James asked us to consider, what is your life? He said, it is even a vapor. It appears for a little time, then vanishes away. We had a to deal with quite a bit of fog, Marvin and I, on the trip that we just made. And along the Mississippi River and all the area of Chattanooga up to Athens, Tennessee, there's even one place on the interstate that says you're entering a fog advisory area. And it says that, of course, if you read it, even when there is no fog, but there is so commonly dangerous fog in that area that they warn you about it. We drove through that going to Athens from Chattanooga, and we drove back through it. It was foggy as we went up, and it was rainy mostly as we were coming back. But had we been there on one of those days when that fog advisory was unnecessary, it certainly would have been unnecessary because of all of the different fogs that have occurred there through all the different years. None of them is evident. They're there for a few hours, they disappear, and they leave no impact. They leave no trace, no record of themselves. And he said, when our life is done, for as the impact on this earth is concerned, it appears for a little time, then vanishes away. Wherefore we ought to say, if the Lord wills, we'll live and move and do this or that. We ought always take into account, what is the will of God for my life? How does God plan for me to live so that I have impact, not just in church, but in the community, in my family, so that my being there makes the world a better place for someone else? We all, I think without exception, everybody wants to feel like I make a difference, not just at the end of life to be looking back at it, but while we're living it, we want to feel like my being here makes a difference. We want to feel like that in the church, that this congregation is a better place because we're a member of it. Now, there may be some people who don't want to contribute something. They don't want to be involved. They don't want to sacrifice. But they're in the minority if there is anyone like that. The rest of us are looking for a place to serve. We're looking for a niche. We're looking for an opportunity. And the reason we're looking for that is because we care and we want to make a difference. We want to make the church better. We want to make the world better. We want to make other people's lives better. We want to give joy. And we want to have peace in our lives. That's what we'd like. Not just to live and that be it, but to have some impact on the world around us. And ultimately, we'd like to go to heaven. And so we ask the question, how is that achieved when you haven't practiced it, you haven't lived before, and you won't have another chance? How's that achieved? Making life a life that's worthwhile, one that does make the difference and does impact the lives of other people and in history makes a difference. Might not be written in a book somewhere, but because we touched lives and made life better for people, it made the world a better place. How do you do it? I'm using an acrostic tonight for what I want to advise. And in short, the acrostic is the word be active, be active, and using each of the letters in those two words, giving some bit of advice. Now I know that I could just stop there and say be active, and that'd make a big difference. But you also know I'm not going to be that brief. We'll put some other words with it. We let the B in the letter B stand for behave. If life is going to be good and worthwhile and impacting, we need to behave, and everybody behaves. Folks say some people just don't have any personality. Oh, yes, they do. It's not a very attractive one, perhaps. It may not be very interesting, it's sure. But everybody's got a personality. Everybody behaves. But what we're talking about is behave as we ought to. Behave in the right way, the way the Lord has advised in His Word. That's what we're trying to do, as we ought to. That is properly. And so we're trying to be the person who's making a difference and becoming a receiver. Be somebody who anticipates the best, anticipates good things. We'll talk about that in a little bit more, but it tends to make us a much more positive person whenever we are people who are ready to receive. And the E and B we will use for enjoy. You can't enjoy life unless you are positive about it, unless you are enjoying and accentuating those positives that are involved as you're going through life. Paul said in Philippians chapter 4 that we ought to dwell upon those things. Whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure, thinking on those positive things will make us people who smile a lot more and whom other people like to embrace. We're studying Romans chapter 8, for instance, and you see all the good promises that God gives to people who serve Him would make us smile, make us be happy. In Christ Jesus, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Him if they walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. If God be for us, who can be against us? Yea, in all these things we're more than conquerors. The victory is spelled out for us. And so as we are being, we enjoy the process and all that we're doing. Ephesians 1 and verse 3 says that all spiritual blessings in heavenly places are in Christ Jesus. We have so much, with every good gift coming to us from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation that's cast by turning. James 1 and verse 17. We behave in the right way, with a joy that we know that we're children of God, and then active, doing something. I do declare that it seems like some people want to live life doing nothing. They just slug along from one place to another, from one action to another, without any vitality, without any interest, without any drive in them. I call it sleepwalking through life. Just from one point to another point, sauntering along without a goal, without an ambition, and not participating in the things that go on around them. And I encourage that you be active. When the book of Ecclesiastes is written, advising behavior for young people and much advice for older ones as well. But in chapter 9, it encourages us, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. Get involved in it. Give it what you got. Later in chapter 11, toward the end of the chapter, he turns his attention particularly to young people whenever he says, young men, enjoy your youth. But then he warns, realizing that you won't be young forever, paraphrasing it a bit. But he says, you take on, do the things the Lord wants you to do while in the days of your youth, lest the days pass and the time comes when you say, I have no interest in that. Get engaged, get involved, find your place in the kingdom of God, in the service of the Lord, and be always people who do things so that you're actively assuming a responsibility for what you are doing. And that's the first for the A, the assume responsibility. Realizing that He calls upon us always to be that way and to do that. So very often, when people are young, they get the idea, and I'm not sure where they may assume it or get it, that there's nothing I can do yet. I got to wait till I get out of college. I got to wait till I have children. I got to wait till I'm married and have children. Then I'll find my place in the church. But I want to encourage you to get active. And you who are here tonight, you're already active. But be engaged and stay active in the kingdom. Find you a place. Find you a ministry. As you young ladies, I'm assuming, will be mostly the ones who are involved in the activity tomorrow, for instance. You're making a difference. You're encouraging someone. You're reminding people who have been left alone as a mate has gone that they still count, they still matter, they still make a contribution, they're still appreciated, and they're still remembered, and that they're still honored by what you're doing. These are good things. Assume that responsibility and find the ways that you can serve. And for the C and active, capitalize on those opportunities. The Apostle Paul talked about how he was the chiefest of sinners. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he spoke of himself as the least one of the apostles, as being born out of due season. And yet he said, in spite of the fact that he basically had a late start and was an enemy of the cause of Jesus Christ to begin with, now that the grace of God allowed him to be who he was, doing and serving the Lord as he did, he said, I worked harder than all the rest of them. I started from behind, and I am pressing on with all the might that I have. And he's saying, I'm trying to do more for the kingdom of God than any of the apostles who are the original apostles, because he said, I know that by the grace of God, I am what I am. I know this is a special, special opportunity for me. You young people who are here tonight, by the grace of God, you are who you are, too. Most of you are grandchildren of members of the Lord's kingdom, and you're children of members of the Lord's kingdom. You are people who've grown up in this country that's known only freedom during your lifetime and mine, where the Bible is available, where the church can meet freely, where we can sing and pray and teach and share. Yes, to have been born into a Christian family where the church is available is a great blessing. I've one time worked briefly with some people in a northern state in the Midwest, where in that local church there were only 2 teenage people. They were brother and sister, and they knew no other members of the Lord's church in the large city where they lived. And they said all their friends at school said, you don't really go to a real church because you don't have any statues in it. You don't go to real church. You don't have any organ. And your minister doesn't wear any robe. And they were trying to maintain the faith in an environment like that. They're still friends. In fact, there's some chance that the girl of the 2 might come see us here. And I don't know that either of them has made the storms of life like they could have if they'd been in a church like this or in a city where they were not the only ones. And I've always known that that was a difficult situation for them. But you're blessed that you have the ones who've gone ahead of you and still are going ahead of you to give you the opportunity that you have. We often might ask, well, how do we repay that? By doing the same thing, by giving the same kind of opportunity to children you'll have someday and to their friends, and maintaining the church and the faith so that a generation from now and 2 generations from now and 3 generations from now, there'll still be a strong and faithful church of the Lord in this community. That's how you pay it forward, by appreciating the grace that God has given. Capitalize upon the opportunity that grace has given you. And T is take control. Take control of what you do and of your life. And I know we're not saying discount what God says, but there's a way in which we assume the direction that our life is going. We make decisions about what we want to do. We focus. We set goals. We set aim on what we want to be. And then we move forward in that direction. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15:58, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, inasmuch as you know your labor is not in vain in the Lord. None of you are too young to decide what you want to do. You might change your mind at some point along the way, but you're not too young to decide the specific goal of serving the Lord. You might decide sooner than you think, with specificity, what you want. The example that's in my mind right now is grandson Daniel. You, I think, all met him last summer when he came with the killing group. When Daniel was here, he was well qualified to be a public speaker and song leader. And he has done both of those things since he was 8 years old. But he intended to be an engineer. But since he's been here to visit us, about 4 months ago or maybe 5, he decided, the Lord has given me the capability. I can preach and I can teach and I can influence young people. And rather than being an engineer, I'm going to be a minister. And I'll start as a youth minister, and maybe I'll grow into the pulpit. And so he changed his plans from going to university to become an engineer, to go to Freed-Hardeman University and major in Bible. Tonight, he is preaching at the church in Leoma, Tennessee. And in the interim, since he made that decision, he has done all the things that he can to acquire all the scholarships that he can and all the backing and support that he can to be able to prepare himself to be a minister of the Lord for all of his life. You can make decisions like that. You can take your life into your own control. There'll be variables you can't control, but with a goal and an aim, with a purpose and a prayer, you can largely make of yourself what you decide with God's help that you want to be. And as part of that activity, you're assuming responsibility, you're capitalizing upon the opportunities, you are taking control, and then individualize what you're going to do. Make it what I'm going to do. Doesn't matter about what other people choose to do, or even what other people might have said, I'd like to see you do this and I'd like to do you that, but it's your life. We'll all stand before the judgment seat of the Lord to give account of ourselves. No man is an island. We're not just out by ourselves. At the same time, we need to listen to other people. We need to take into account the things that other people think. Remember when the Apostle Paul and Barnabas were engaged in that issue of people trying to teach early Christians that they had to keep the law of Moses also, and they had to be circumcised. And when that needed to be settled, they went back to Jerusalem and they met with other apostles. And there together, they listened and they talked and they debated, and they came forth with a decision as to what they would advise to those Gentile Christians. We're always open to those kinds of counseling situations and the ideas of others, but so far as the life is concerned, no one's going to give account of it except you, and maybe in a sense, ultimately elders under whom you served will give an account as to your faithfulness in the teaching that you received. And V is verify your existence. You see, you could just live here and die, and it not make a whole lot of difference. But if you decide, I'm going to contribute something, I'm going to achieve something. Most all of the great achievers that you've studied about in history and school, or if you have some hero that you want to look up and say, let me look and see how did they achieve those things, you'll find that they had a goal. One of the fellows was telling us a story in Tennessee this weekend about George Washington Carver. And course, he's one of the greatest inventors that this country has ever had. And he was at over 200 different uses that he ultimately found for the peanut. But they said the story was that before he began working with the peanut, he took one solitary peanut out of the shell and he placed it on his desk in a prominent place in front of him, and he kept it there for years. And he prayed over that peanut. He said, Lord, show me what I can make of this peanut. Show me the ways that this peanut can help humanity. And for years, he prayed over the peanut, and he kept on finding ways that he could develop more great uses for the peanut. If you decide, I want to do a certain thing, and put it in front of yourself, between you and the Lord, and you talk to him regularly about what you want to achieve and ask him into your life and ask him to help you to do that, you will find remarkable outcome because you individualized and you concentrated and you verified your existence. That's our V. You verified your existence by what you accomplished. I'm not an example that I should probably use. But I can tell you that when I was your age, still at home, I had no resources so far as finances are concerned. There was one high school teacher, Mr. Caperton, who often would encourage me by saying, Willie, are you going to college? And I'd say, I don't see any way that I could possibly go to college. There's no money. There's no way. And he always said, Willie, if there's a will, there's a way. I started preaching when I was 14, and that's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to prepare myself to do. I wanted to go to one of our Christian colleges and prepare to preach. I knew that I needed education in order to serve the best that I could. I graduated the highest ranking boy in my class, and there was a scholarship available from any private college in Texas that was granted me. I still have it back in Florence. It was for $25, and I couldn't buy an hour with that. And so I just thought it was a bit of a joke, and I kept it as a souvenir. But God didn't leave it with that little piece of paper. Before I finished high school, someone from West Texas that I hadn't seen in probably 12 years wrote to Mother and said, is Willie going to college? And she said, I have to ask him. And she said, if he decides to, have him write to us and let us know. And when I decided I just had to, I sent a letter, and that family that weren't relatives sent me $200 a semester for about 6 semesters getting me started. And churches hired me and let me preach and let me go to school full time while I preached full time for them. I reached the point where I couldn't drive far enough to get to any school of higher education eventually from the church where I worked. I was driving 70 miles one way twice a week, and I'd got all that I could get there, but I still didn't have but 12 hours of religion and Bible. And a preacher came to hold a meeting where I was, and he said, what are you going to do about your education? And I said, I don't know, I guess I'm about done. He said, would you like to have a degree in religion? Would I? Yes, I've always wanted. He said, well, I just held a meeting recently in a church in New Mexico that's 33 miles from Portales, New Mexico, where they have a Bible chair. And that Bible chair is unusual. Most of them can only offer 12 hours at a state university, but that one can offer 2 degrees in religion, a bachelor's and a master's. Would you like me to recommend you to that church because they need a preacher? And I said, of course. And we were invited to come out, and within 3 weeks I was a student at Eastern New Mexico University, where I would earn a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in religion at state tuition. Never even paid out of state tuition on my first semester there. And in those days, the tuition was roughly $50 a semester, and my books were less than $100. If you think God didn't get involved in that, you don't know how poor I was. And for those doors to open that way could only happen because I set a goal and was sincere to try to do it and talk with God about it. And he heard and he answered, and he's continued to for these many years as brethren still let me work with them as you do. Set a goal. Verify your existence by making it something that makes a difference, and then envision it. Envision it as being true. For in those years in high school, I had to envision preaching for little county churches. I envisioned that someday I'd preach to great assemblies as I plowed rows of corn and potatoes and cotton. I would envision standing before great assemblies of people, preaching and teaching. I would envision going to foreign countries and introducing the gospel to people who'd never had that opportunity, looking into the future and believing. And those dreams never exceeded what has really happened, the opportunities that I've had. Life is worthwhile if you are active. Be active in the right ways, dedicating yourself to the right purposes with a goal and aim and a dedication to God. And he will bless you and make you more than you ever dreamed at this point in time that you could be. Because you can, with the Apostle Paul and with me, someday say, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And the grace that he has given to me has not been in vain. My life has made a difference. Yours can too. And of course, all that is only because Jesus made the difference, leaving heaven and coming to this earth for us, to give us the chance to be who we are and do what we do and make the impact upon the world as he urges us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. That is our main responsibility in response to his grace, to try to tell someone else. And tonight, if you've never obeyed that gospel of Jesus Christ, we encourage you once again to take advantage of that opportunity. We're here to help you do that. Or if you're part of the kingdom and you've erred, drifted, if you feel the need for special prayer for your life, for your goals, your aims, your ambitions, we'll pray with you about that. We just invite you to come while we stand together and sing.